Welcome to the Blackout Show, presented by the Guillen Grid, a show about the Chicago White Sox baseball, the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll debate what's working and what's not on the south side of Chicago. It's old school versus new school baseball. And most importantly, we're keeping all the receipts.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Tonight, Jay is officially replaced permanently for at least the next hour, and my lucky guest of honor that's replacing him for the time being is Jackson Scudder. Jackson, I've given you a fairly well introduction for the past, I think, 5 shows now that we've had you on, so we know who you are. You are part of Baseball Unstitched and still a data analytics man of Eastern Tennessee Southern University. Jackson, welcome to the show.
Yeah, really happy to be here and talk some ball. Anytime I get to talk baseball, it's a good time.
Yeah. And listen, man, I think you are joining a pivotal time for White Sox baseball because we just had a total bender of a weekend celebrating Ozzie Guillen's retirement ceremony. That being said, and again, I took a nice shot there of the background of that moment for Ozzie's speech. But Jackson, you are a Cardinals fan at heart. You saw, it's weird because I know when it comes to Chicago, you hate the Cubs side, but I feel like there's a fairly mediocre ground between the Cardinals and White Sox. But from an outsider, what's your perspective of Ozzie Guillen as the manager? Because I feel like with your age, you probably don't remember him as a player. So as far as a manager goes, what's your thoughts of Ozzie Guillen?
Like, to be honest, I don't remember him as a manager too much, but like I've read a bunch of stories. Like I've watched a bunch of documentaries on that 2005 team and just the story of that team and what's happened. And like from everything I've read, everything I've watched, Ozzie's such an enjoyable guy, and you can tell just by like watching him talk, watching him manage, watching people talk about him, like how much he loved the game of baseball and just how much enjoyment he got from managing it. And like I've just like such an interesting guy to watch talk. He's a very interesting perspective on the game of baseball, and I've just always been a fan of him, like in any capacity, watching him doing interviews, watching him doing anything, watching old broadcasts of old White Sox games in 2005. But I've always been a fan of his.
Yeah, and this is another thing is like there was a connection of even La Russa because La Russa, started here.
Yeah.
Obviously, you saw La Russa as a Cardinals fan, and then the White Sox fans, especially my generation, they see him coming back as a manager in 21, and I don't understand the people that hated the man just because of like off-field stuff, but just to have a Hall of Fame, this is La Russa, of course, but as a Hall of Fame manager, I enjoyed that perspective or having that manager later. But I can tell you that, earlier in my fandom, like Ozzie to me, one of my favorite, I'd say just call it how it is, favorite baseball personalities in the game. And then when you see him as pre and post game, like with all the knowledge he has, it just makes it easier for the fans to kind of follow the game and can appreciate him because I don't even know if there is a similar personality like him out there of one that was a player, a world championship manager, and then can continue that into a baseball analyst in a post game show. Like I don't see too many of those profiles out there. And we were talking pre-show, Jackson, but we saw a couple of haters of his following his retirement day. But I just don't understand I just think that hate that goes towards his way, it's just jealousy, because I don't think there should be any reason of doubt when it comes to Ozzie Guillen and having his number retired. And Jackson, you could probably, maybe I'm wrong here, but I think there's no doubt with him being retired under the White Sox organization, it's not like he's, getting his nomination for the Hall of Fame. Because that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
So, but I do say that to say this, though. I feel like there's a lot of missed time with Ozzie, because I think he was last in the game. Maybe it was 2013 in Miami, but
2012.
Yeah, 2012. So thank you for correcting me. But so we're 14 years later? He's been out of the game for 14 years. And I still feel like through all this time, he probably should have been, I know he might've been blacklisted or whatever, but I feel like he could have been given an opportunity in that time since then to, see what he has left in that tank. But to say the least, Ozzie's day was beautiful. The ceremony was amazing. I was there in person, and kind of just took it in because, again, I took the train in, Jackson, to get to the stadium just because it was sold out parking lot. And by the time I got there, this is 3 hours before game time, and the lines are already wrapping around the parking lot outside the rate. And they actually opened the gates early to get everybody in the ballpark. But when I got to my seat, I'm like, all right, I just have to take this in because this is a moment that you're never going to see again. And just for me personally, being a part of this network, under the Guillen's, the Guillen Grid, we've all been kind of waiting for this moment to come. And the fact that it did come, I just took it all in and enjoyed it as a fan. And then the White Sox win, and to Ozzie, that means a whole lot more to him, because I think he wouldn't, he'd definitely be very upset along with the fans if they lose that game. And ironically, I did have a conversation later in the game. It was the sixth inning with our friend of the show, Dan Evans. And we were saying I think at that time it was 0-0. And we're I think I predicted last week that I predicted the Sox were going to win in a walk-off. So I'm looking at the scoreboard and I'm like, oh no, don't tell me this is going to happen. And I told Dan, I'm like, man, if they walk this off, I predicted it would be a walk-off. And he's like, bro, man, he's like, these are the hardest games to win, is when all the emotions are there. And especially coming off, the night before when they got beat up a little bit. But Slavko actually called out when Tristan Peters came to bat with 2 outs. He's like, let's actually watch this, because we were kind of having a conversation on the concourse, and there's runners in scoring position. So Slavko's like, hey, let's go take a look at this Tristan Peters at bat. And next thing you know, he just fucking drives it into the gap, and 2 come in to take the lead. But beautiful way to end it. Sox win, and then that set up the rubber match yesterday, and clearly the Sox took a beating on Cantillo, but that's just awesome, man. To end the weekend beating Cleveland, taking advantage of first place. I don't think there's a better way to end the retirement of Ozzie Guillen's number 13. But Jackson, I appreciate you with giving us a little insight, because I couldn't remember where your age was, so maybe that does align to not.
Yeah, I was born in 2005, so I was 4 months old when the White Sox won, or no, 6 months old when the White Sox won the World Series in 2005. So yeah, that definitely don't have a bunch of memories of that. Like I said, that's always been a fascinating team for me. So I've watched some stuff on them for sure.
Fair enough. Well, that's a good way to wrap up Ozzie Guillen's retirement. And next week, I think Jay and I will go into that a little bit more because I know Jay will have some feelings to discuss, Jackson. You know, Jay can be an emotional man. So we'll touch on that with Jay, and hopefully we can get Junior and Slavko in to join us as well. But this show, for everyone watching this week, Jackson, I gave you the homework assignment. We are going to discuss, because we didn't actually, just so you know, Jackson, because I didn't tell you this either, but at the week after the draft, we didn't really do a deep dive into it. We had something else planned for that week. So my thoughts on this is actually going to be, I guess, savored, if you wish, to your homework assignment on the draft class. So everything I'm going to say is what I've thought about it, almost a month. So it's already been a month, Jackson, but a month after this draft class has took place. But we're going to do a deep dive into the draft class. We're going to talk about the White Sox 4 deals at the deadline. We went into it pretty in depth last episode, but you're an outsider, so I'm actually curious to see and hear your thoughts of it. And then you actually came up with some trade targets that were potential, I want to say potential misses, but maybe they could have helped out the roster, if not a little bit better than what we've already got in deals. And then we're going to wrap it up and talk about McDougal and Hagen Smith getting their promotions. And then that's how we're going to wrap the show. So, Jackson, let's start it off. All right. We are going to talk first about the 2026 White Sox draft class, starting at 1-1 with Rock Chalowski. Jackson, take it away with Rock.
Not a whole lot to be said there. This was a guy he was first on my board the entire time. Some people dropped him down to second or third. He was first on my board. I wanted the White Sox to take him. I thought he was the right pick. I agreed with the pick. I still agree with the pick to this day. They got him. They got him a little under slot. Such a high upside, high floor player. Fits the timeline the White Sox are kind of in right now because I think he can make an impact sooner rather than later. I mean, this was a guy last year at UCLA. He had a down year in some people's eyes. In slash 320, 452, 636 with 10 doubles, 21 home runs, and had the same amount of strikeouts as walks. Doesn't swing and miss a whole lot, doesn't chase, and plays a good shortstop. I mean, I feel like this was a slam dunk pick. Not necessarily saying that he's going to be an automatic all-star, but I think this is a guy that at the very least is going to make an impact on the roster for the next 2 or 3 years.
And, Jackson, before we move on, my take at 1-1 was take best player available. For me, I don't care if it fit your window or not, whether it is college bat or high school prep. If you felt Rock is best over both Emerson, Lackey, or Vaughn. Lackey, sorry. When I think Lackey, I'm thinking the pitcher, and I've got the catcher prospect in my head, but Lackey. I wasn't the biggest Lackey fan. I understood the hype of him, going into this season, the production he put up. But for me, it was always, 1-1 Rock, 1-2 Grady. And again, I'm choosing Rock for BPA. But do you truly feel like as an outsider that, are you even considering the window in that situation when you have the first pick overall?
In that spot, not really. I agree with you. I feel like you just have to take the best player available. But I feel like a little bit the White Sox, we talked about this in our pre-draft show. The White Sox are not the typical team to have the number 1 overall pick. Typically, when a team is drafting number 1 overall, the season they are doing it, they suck. And when the White Sox were drafting number 1 overall, they were first place in the AL Central, competing for playoff spot. They still are right now. But I feel like there was maybe a little bit of Chalowski has a higher floor than Emerson does, if that makes sense. I feel like at the bare minimum, you're getting an impact player with Rock, even though they do both still have the similar all-star, superstar level upsides. So I feel like I could have seen that play into a little bit, but I also feel like the ability they were able to get him a little bit under slot could have played into it as well. Because I think it would have cost a lot more money to grab Emerson in that spot. But the fact they would get Chalowski a little under slot, and we saw them spend that money down the board on some high school guys.
I think it would have been the same regardless on the money side, especially after the Sox made that deal. We'll touch on it, but when they traded Jacob Gonzalez and got the comp-based selection, they just added more money to their class slot selection. So, and because originally I think the talk was like, Rock can potentially sign at 9.5, and then he gets signed for 10.3. So, oh gosh, about what is that at 10.5? So 800K more than anticipated. Still, like you're saying, it's still $1 million under the the slotted amount, but that's still quite the deal for Rock at the end of the day, regardless of who they were going to pick. But I can understand what you're saying too at the same time, because they want the most amount of money going into that, not only to make that pick, but to gear themselves for their execution on the guys that they want to surround Rock in that class with, and how they want to layer their system. So let's talk about layering the system now, because I'm just going to say this, and we're going to definitely deep dive here, but I really enjoyed, I want to say, their first 3 picks. When we get to 77, I want to stop there for a second, because I did not I'll save my thoughts onto that, but that's where I was kind of like iffy going from there. But as a whole, I really enjoyed the first 3 picks. So following Rock Chalowski Jackson, I alluded to the trade the night before, which was awesome, because I think it was on a Friday they made the deal, but the night we did the show, the pre-draft show on Thursday night, and we talked about, I asked, I think we had Nate Rasmussen from Overslot on with us, and I'm like, hey, can there be a potential move for a comp selection? And he brought up the Pirates, and I was like, like that'd be cool. Like if we can get a comp selection out of, going into that draft, because that opens up the window for, some overslot moves. I didn't anticipate that they were actually going to pull the trigger on it. Let's just say it how it is. So Sox pick Landon Tomey. They pull the deal. They make the trade with Pittsburgh. They trade away Jacob Gonzalez away for the rights of that 34th pick, and they picked Landon Tomey. Going into that that draft, Jackson, I thought Landon can go anywhere from like 25 to up to that 41st pick that we had, and the fact that Landon was available still, and they actually came to an agreement, with the Tomey family to for Landon to sign it, because I mean, if you're the Tomey family, that's still consideration for, hey, we can still bet on Landon if we feel like he can go higher in the next opportunity with another 3 years of development in college. But they agreed to terms, right? And they signed him. They signed Landon at 2.8 with so that 2.4 slot selection was a projection. So he was overslotted by $399. Jackson, I want to hear, well, actually, this is kind of ironic, Jackson, because I was telling OJ, like when I saw him play, like when he was 12, I'm like, this kid has a potential to be something, and then I think it was going into this past year, we were talking about Landon, and OJ's like, there's no way he's going to go, above the second round. And I'm like, I think he could potentially be a first rounder. And he was calling me crazy because he saw Andrew Jackson's kid, Drew Jones. Sorry, Drew Jones.
Yeah.
Oh, I got so many names in my head, Jackson. I'm thinking your name, Jackson, right in front of me. So Drew Jones, yes, he saw how that went. So he was telling me how this could be like another like Drew Jones situation. And I'm like, come on, man, like just allow the kid, to have his moment. And allow him to. We'll see how his development goes. But sure enough, he goes in the comp A. So I'm taking shots at OJ. But Jackson, I want to hear your thoughts at 34th here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, son of Jim Tomei is just a good athlete, good bat to ball skills, and like when we were doing our big board over at Baseball Unstitched, and we were like doing prep work for it beforehand, like off camera, and we were talking about it in our head. We were like, man, if Tomei got to 41, this is before the trade. If Tomei got to 41, that'd be a really good second round pick for the White Sox. So that makes a lot of sense. And then I remember the night the trade happened, I got sent to our group chat for Baseball Unstitched, and we all were like, this is Tomei. They're taking Tomei. It's going to be awesome. It's going to fire me up. And I feel like the trade just makes so much sense. And then getting him at that spot makes so much sense, especially being able to pay a little over slot for him after what you're able to do with Rocket 1-1. I think the fit is just perfect. There's obviously some good familiarity there with the family and the franchise, but he's a good baseball player. Like, there's no denying that. Like, good athlete, good bat to ball skills, has shown like a high IQ, good swing decisions, good speed, has shown to be able to play multiple positions. I've seen some project him as like a super utility kind of guy once he gets all the way up to the next level. I think he just has a lot of upside, and I think he's just going to be a good baseball player. Maybe not like full-on superstar upside. Obviously, I don't think he has upside like a Rock Chalowski, but I feel like this is going to be a guy who we just look at 5 years into his career, and he's racked up 15 WAR, and we're just like, yeah, I mean, he's a good baseball player. Not much else to be said.
So like more so like a role player, essentially.
Yeah, I could see him kind of being like a Chase Mydroff. The role that Chris Taylor's been playing for the Dodgers for the past like decade, it feels almost. Obviously, he has a higher upside than that, but I can just kind of feel him being in that role, just like leader of the clubhouse. Just one of those guys. I mean, obviously, young guy. We don't know how he's going to progress, but I feel like that'd be a really good storyline for him to get to.
Yeah, and truthfully, when I was looking at, that range of guys that went around him and shortly after him, you could probably talk me into what was the Dodgers took? Was it Bo Lawrence? Was it?
Yeah, I think so.
I forgot how much. I think he signed for maybe 3.8. Was it with the Dodgers? That one I could have probably gone back and forth on. I do like that profile of Lawrence, but I can understand and we'll get to it here coming up here. But going with who they got at 41, like if you tell me that it's either us having, not pulling the trigger on the comp deal and just taking Bo Lawrence at 41, or taking with what they end up taking, which was Tomei and Prosek at 41, I'm obviously going to take the latter of that, right? Because the upside for both of those guys, I think, is worth taking that shot on. So again, at 41, they end up taking Cole Prosek at 2.4 slot. And the projection, so he was actually under slot because that slot was at 3.2 under slot of 800K. So, which actually surprises me because I saw several models take Prosek prior to 25. So him dropping down to, again, that range where you can slide him to 41 and give him that money. I feel like I favor his upside a little bit more than Landon's, but I really like getting both, grabbing that opportunity, making that deal, and to, have that opportunity to essentially have, 3 players in the top 45,
Yeah. For me with Prosek, I think like despite they're both high school infielders, but I feel like they're different players. Like I feel like Tomei is just the better athlete. I feel like Tomei is end up going to be playing up the middle somewhere or being an elite defender in a corner spot somewhere, whether it be third base or a corner outfield. I feel like Prosek's going to kind of just fill into like a corners outfield, corner infield spot. But I like his overall hitting tool a little bit better. Just has good hitting ability, has shown really good power and pop. Like production in games is showing good exit velos throughout different scouting events and stuff. I feel like he might be a more polished hitter right now than Tomei, but I think athletically isn't as gifted depending on like where he's going to play at the next level. I think being able to get both of those guys, like both being high school infielders, both very different type of prospects, is just I think that's just very valuable for the White Sox system right now.
Yeah, I'm right with you. Before we move on, though, Jackson, do you think there was any way, or do you think there's any way that you would mix match that situation, or do you think that was the best as it was, evaluating it in hindsight?
I think Tomei might have a little higher upside, so I think it made sense getting him in that spot. And obviously, it looked like he was asking for a little bit more money. It was going to take more money to match him, so I think it made a lot of sense being able to take Tomei first and then sliding down and getting the next guy.
Or like, do you think there's anyone else to mix with Prosek in that range? Or
I mean, no, I think they ended up making the right decision. I mean, there's a bunch of like high school, like Bo Lawrence, you mentioned, was at 40 to the Dodgers. Taj Marchland went at 33 to the Rays right before Tomei. There was a bunch of high schoolers. Tyler Spangler went at 36 to the Phillies. But I feel like I said, the White Sox were able to get two different kinds of players. I feel like they just complement each other very well in the farm system, being able to get like kind of a good athlete and then more of a true hitter guy.
yeah, I'm actually there with you. Like I said, I kind of alluded to earlier, I was happy with the first three, and this is a part of the draft where I think my interest peaked more so because I was really curious on how 77 was going to go. And as I kind of set us up here, Jackson, when we had on Nate in that draft preview, I asked him right before he left, I asked him the question of, and essentially a lot of that show, it was really optimistic, right? And I wanted to kind of equal the playing field. And I asked him the question of like, what would disappoint you of Chris Getz going into this draft? If he didn't do this, you'd be disappointed, essentially, is what I asked him. And Nate said, I feel like in the situation that this is kind of setting itself up to be, that if you're the White Sox, you can kind of take a shot on he said, a high school prep arm to develop at the 77 slot selection. And he said there should be a couple names there to keep an eye out on. But his philosophy was that, and I agreed with it, because like in prior drafts, they haven't yet taken that high school prep arm to develop yet, and pitching was a need going into this situation, because it's one of the weaknesses right now in the system. When you're laying it out, pitching itself is something that they need. And how it's set up to be, you had, I think it was Ethan Waxman. I forgot where he ended up going to and signing for. But then you also had, Spencer Hirschkorn, if I remember right. And he went to Atlanta at an overslot. Hirschkorn was the one that I was going crazy on X Jackson, because like when I saw going into day 2 that he was available, I'm like, all right, it was him. And I forgot the hitter. I forgot the hitter that I was kind of going back and forth on. But I was really hoping for Hirschkorn. And when I saw the Sox go with is it Joey Volchko? Is that
Volchko? Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with Volchko, right? I like, he's got that dog in him, right? As a Georgia kid. But for me, like, I'm just feeling that pen arm out of him. I'm not feeling like that profile is going. I could be wrong, bro. They can develop him into maybe a starting pitcher, right? What the hell do I know what he will end up being? But what I'm saying is, I just rather take that shot on a high school prep arm, with that ceiling to develop to. And for me, I was really hoping for Hirschkorn. But I want to hear your thoughts first on Volchko, and then I'll hear what your thoughts are at that selection. So I'll let you take it away at 77.
So overall, with kind of what you're talking about with the value, I didn't hate the strategy, because 9 of the first 14 picks for the White Sox were bats. I feel like, in my opinion, over the past couple of years, I've trusted the White Sox developing of bats a little bit more. I've trusted their developing of arms. So I felt like it made more sense to load up on some bats they can develop and potentially, hopefully, end up flipping down the line if they can develop those bats correctly. And with the arms they did draft overall down the entire board, I kind of separated them into two different groups. That is some guys that have really funky arm action and are really weird, and then some guys with really strong bodies that throw really hard and have high upside. I feel like they took either just weird arms or just high upside raw arm talent, and Volchko kind of falls into like the weird funky arm action guy. He was at Georgia last year. I thought he was decent value at 77. Last year at Georgia had a 3.68 ERA, 3.51 FIP, got a lot of whiff, got a lot of chase. Has a lower slot and like has a natural, like really weird cutty fastball and plays a nice little sweeping slider and depthy curveball off of it. If you watch him throw, it just looks really weird. And while I think he could be a very good reliever, I think there's a chance he's 6 as a starter. He has a really good 3-pitch mix. I think that he can develop like a little splitter, maybe a sinker off of it. He kind of shown those a little bit at college. I think he could end up being a starter. And like I said, he kind of falls into like the funky, weird arm action guys that just look like they'd be tough to pick up on and tough to face in the box.
You're trying to talk me out of my misery, man. That's fair enough, though, man. Again, I can't really hate on it too much. Just again, because Getz made the deal, made this slot selection. And again, there's nothing, like I said, there's nothing wrong with Volchko. Like, he's got that dog in him. The stuff is there, the velocity is there. Especially, and we'll get to this too, Jackson. They just dealt one of their, prior to the last 2 weeks going to the deadline, Gabe Davis was your best arm in that system as a production standpoint of this year. I know he got roughed up in Double-A when he got promoted up, but his high A numbers, I think he had like a 2 ERA with like a 1 whip. Like, he was probably your best arm in the system going into that deadline. And that's one of those guys that I thought could be a good setup man, coming out of the lockout. And I really thought it was going to be Volchko and Davis as your two guys that you might be able to lean on. Let's just say if you do deal a Grant Taylor eventually, or however they're going to go about it with Grant. But again, hell of an arm to have in that bullpen when he does get promoted eventually. But let's get into the 4th round pick. Actually, your 4th and 5th rounders.
I can go they're very similar. I kind of go both of them.
Go for it, bro. They're 2 Pacific kids, so take it away.
So in the 4th round, they took Oregon State right-handed pitcher Eric Segura, I believe is how you pronounce it. I'm not good at his pronunciations, but we'll go with that. He kind of fits in like I said, White Sox had the 2 guys, like the weird funky arms and the projectable big arms. He falls into the funky arm. If you watch him throw, it's really just funky arm action. It looks very deceptive, and like he hides the ball really well. Decent fastball movement, plays a sinker, has a very nice sweeping slider off of it. At Oregon State this year, he had 15 starts, 2.2 ERA, 2.89 FIP, 27% K, 9% walk. Very, very good production numbers. Like, we saw what he could do pitching. Oregon State, very good team, pitched at a good level. I think right now with his stuff, he projects as a reliever as well. But I also know, he had a very good ability to start games. He looked comfortable doing that. I would not be surprised if he gets in the White Sox system, adds 1 pitch, and booms, they're starting games right then. I thought that was a fun pick. At 137 in the 5th round, they took Oregon right-handed pitcher Cal Scaroli. We'll go with that, Scaroli. This kind of fits into like the big body frame guys of the other side. 6'4", 200. Solid fastball, good ride. Adds in like a shorter slider and a big curveball. Very projectable. At Oregon this year, 3.2, 3.32 ERA, 3.78 FIP, an insane 35% strikeout rate, but 14% walk rate, generated whiff at a 33% rate. Elite K numbers. Has probably some of the best stuff of any pitcher taken by the White Sox in this class, but has a little bit of walk problems. This kind of fits into like the very projectable, mold them down, find what you got with them, but he has like the swing and the stuff. He kind of fits the Hagen Smith, Tanner McDougal whole like big body guys who throw hard, gets a lot of swings and misses, and we're going to try to figure out command. He kind of fits into that one. I feel like the first two pitchers they take kind of fit in like the weird, funky, crafty little bit. They have great stuff, but they're not like big physical guys on the mound, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that I asked Nate about, these guys here at this range, and Nate's a Seattle guy, Jackson, so he loves his boys out in the Pacific. So when it came to these two, I know he was really ecstatic for Segura, talking about his ground rate numbers and his K percentage that he's shown out in the Pacific of his time out there. So I'm very curious to see, where Segura ends up. Is he going to be a guy that's going to be filling into the back of the rotation, at some point, or is he going to be a bullpen guy? So me personally, I would love to see him break the rotation because we got to talk about Jackson, our rotation, when we get to our deadline talk, but it's going to be interesting to see how these guys go. But I like the shots that the Sox took for these two kids. And at this point, Jackson, I'm going to allow you to take it away because I know that you got some more names to cover. So go ahead and take it away.
I'll kind of run quickly through a couple names. In the 6th round, they took a high school outfielder, Alex Wingarder. Elite athlete, great runner, strong arm. I think he's just a raw, explosive athlete that needs to just kind of grow into his body and develop a little bit. I showed him decent power. Elite athlete, good runner. And then their next two picks, they took Xavier outfielder Clay Burdett and Wichita State third baseman Jason Jones. Both of these guys just hit the ball very well at the levels they were at. Smaller mid-major college guys, both put very good numbers. Burdett, 17 doubles, 17 home runs, hit 343. Jason Jones, older, only struck out 13% of the time, 15 home runs at Wichita State. In the 9th round, Virginia Tech right-handed pitcher Luke Crater. I've seen this dude pitch in person multiple times. He fits into the whole big body, projectable. Let's see what happens. Been up to 99, 100, big, long, lanky arm, throws really hard. Had a 3.16 ERA, 4 FIP at Virginia Tech this year. Was decent, but like I said, very projectable arm, throws really hard. That's just one you get him in the system, see what happens. That gets to the 10th round where they took Fairfield outfielder Matthew Pacherio. We'll go with that. Low major outfielder, put up incredible numbers at Fairfield. 13 doubles, 20 home runs there. I believe he was an underslot selection, but I mean, he's had the production to back stuff up, takes a lot of walks. I think he's a good pick at that spot. And then the last guy I'll do is their last high school guy, I believe they took Kyle Castile, right-handed pitcher in the 11th round. This kind of fits into, again, the big body guys, 6'5", 205, low to mid-90s fastball, good secondary, 18 years old. Again, that's one of the guys who say, get that body, get that fastball in the system. Let's just play around and see what happens.
Yeah. And this, in general, I'm going to go back to 77 for a second because I think here's Gornstein for 3.8. So obviously to make that money up in this draft, the White Sox wouldn't have never, they couldn't have gone over slot at, let's see, it was Kale and Alex is where they went over slot. So they would have never been able to sign those guys, if they were going to go over slot at 77. So this was all about depth, right? Layering their system and getting depth. So with how things are looking on the position players with under Ryan Fuller and the hitting coordinator, that they've been developing hitters well lately. So I don't hate it if your philosophy into this is we're going to go, we're going to spend money and we're going to go deep, right? As much as I want to see that pitcher, bro, because we haven't gotten in the last two drafts, I can't hate it because at the end of the day, not all these guys are going to pan out. So you got to take as many shots as you can. And at the end of the day, there's other ways to get pitchers, right, Jackson? So we just have to roll with it. I am curious, though, Jackson, as we wrap this up, you're talking about Luke Crater. So give me a look. So where was he at? Where did you see him?
So I actually saw him pitch 2 years ago. He started at Lafayette, which is a Division I in New England area. I don't exactly know where. And they came to play ETSU, and I saw him pitch then. Then he transferred to Virginia Tech, and we play Virginia Tech every year at ETSU, just like a 2-hour drive up the road. And so I saw him pitch at Virginia Tech again, and like it's definitely a little wild sometimes, and it's not exactly like a perfect dominating arm. But like I said, just very long, lanky, and throws 99, has been up to 9,100, sits in the upper 90s, has a decent little cutter, has a little depthy slider. I don't think he's like ready right away or anything. There's a reason he was a 9th-round pick. But I don't hate the idea of just like, this guy throws 100. Let's get him in the system, see if we can get him 1 or 2 comfortable off-speed pitches, get his velocity consistent, and just have fun with it. I mean, we've seen what they've done with Grant Taylor, another guy. Obviously, was probably a better college arm than this kid was, but they were able to mold down Grant Taylor and get him to where he is now, where he's one of my favorite pitchers to watch in baseball. So we've kind of seen their ability to kind of mold down the projectile arms and help them get better. I think Crater was like just a fun pick at 255.
Was it more so that caught your eye was the velocity, or is there something even about the off speed that you kind of caught you off guard with him?
The velocity honestly just kind of caught me off guard more than anything. He had a pretty decent little slider, and I like his cutter metrically, but when we played him, we hit it a little bit. I think it was just because at the college level, he was speeding bats up with the fastball, and then when he would try to go off speed, guys would get on time with it. I have a feeling that might play a little bit better at the next level. But like I said, we'll see how it goes. I'm interested to see how he ends up going. I think he's almost definitely going to be a reliever. I'm just interested to see how they go about like developing him, if they add pitches, if they want to try to make him a starter right away, or if they just say, let's get the arm in the bullpen and let it rip.
Yeah. I might have to clip that one, Jackson. That might be our clip with you, but I'm just messing with you. We'll see. I mean, I'm definitely clipping that because that's the first time I've heard some in depth about Luke Crater. You know, I feel like more talk has been further up the class, but the fact that you've seen him. So, but
the other one I've seen before too is our 13th round pick Grayson Fitzwater. He plays in the same conference as ETSU. He went to VMI, and just a miserable guy to try to pitch against. He had a 16% strikeout rate and a 20% walk rate last year. Did not chase. Very patient at the plate. Hit 21 home runs. The main reason he just kind of fell down the board is he struggled a little bit against high velocity. And then just playing first base, it's tough to get drafted as a college first baseman without having like a ton of ability to move positions. But his approach was just unbelievably mature at the college level. I mean, this guy, I've watched him for 3 years now. We've played them every year for 3 years. But like I said, just unbelievably mature approach. This guy was spitting on pitches that he had no business spitting at. And then when he got the bat in the zone, he was able to let it rip, and he hit some real pop.
And I'm just going to be completely honest, man. I didn't get a chance to catch your guys' breakdown on the White Sox on when you guys broke down the draft.
Yeah.
So I want you to tell me from an outsider, what is your overall thoughts on the White Sox draft class as a whole?
Yeah, as I kind of talked about earlier, 9 of the first 14 picks were bats, and we both talked about it. I think that is exactly what the Sox need to be doing, just because I trust their ability to develop bats more than arms right now. So I feel like getting a bunch of bats in there, get some good prospects in there, and go buy some pitching. Go trade for some pitching. Go sign some pitching. Develop these bats and trade them for some pitching. Because right now I trust the White Sox ability to develop the hitting a little bit more. I thought they did a really good job with that. I really like those first 3 round picks, as we talked about. I think Rock is awesome, and I think they nailed it with Nexu, Tomic, and Pulisic. I think the fun pitchers I think they added some really fun pitchers down the board. There's a couple I didn't even bring up who I also really liked. But I thought overall they were just adding some high upside guys down the board. And then they mix it in with like some high upside younger bats, and then a mix of like veteran college guys who like have just shown the ability to hit the ball. I mean, overall, I thought it was a pretty decent class, and it would get some decent value down the board. But like I said, I love their ability to just go out and say, we know how to develop hitters. We're going to go draft hitters, develop them, and make them really good players. I think that was just a really smart strategy. And I overall thought it was a very solid class. And I think in 5 years, I hope we look back and say this is one of the most impactful classes the White Sox have had.
I even just think in general, bro, because I know that that what was it 24 class that was ridiculous, and I'm just hoping that that 26 class kind of mirrors that 24 class because I personally, and we'll talk about Hagen here shortly, but there were two other bats in that 24 class that I was really pissed off about that they passed on. Not saying anything against Hagen. It's just there's two hitters particularly that I'm always going to value the hitter over the pitcher just because the hitter is going to be playing what 4 to 5 games out of the week than the ones start from the pitcher. So we're gonna wrap up the 26 draft class, but I agree with you as a general approach. I think they nailed it. Go with your strengths and play with the money, right? Because you had a lot of, and they use it all up, in the 5% that they had going into it. So, Jackson, you killed your homework assignment. So we are going to talk about some wheeling and dealing going on at the trade deadline with these White Sox. Let me see if I can pull up. How about this? I'm going to put up the trades again, and I'll kind of allow you to break it down a little bit and go into what you kind of looked up on your own. And I'm going to talk a little bit of my own insight as well, because I know I want to get your thoughts. Because, again, when I talked about this with the guys, it was kind of our own sicko mindset about the White Sox, but I want to hear your perspective on the outside of this as well. So, first trade. For our audio listeners, and just as a reminder, the White Sox got Luis Castillo, and we saw he actually, I felt like he had a pretty solid overall performance in Boston. I know he got beat up. I think it was the 5th inning, if I remember. 4th or 5th inning, I know he got beat up a little bit. But, again, the White Sox got beat up in that whole series with Boston, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. But we traded away Sir Anthony Dominguez, Boston Smith, the catching prospect, Nolan Jones, who we picked up on waivers prior from Colorado, and then cash considerations. There is a part of this trade I want to go over with you shortly, Jackson, but I want to get your beginning thoughts on this.
Oh, yeah. Overall, I thought it was a pretty decent trade. Castillo has not had a great year with the Mariners, but if you look at his track record, it's pretty impressive. I mean, he's had 5 or 6, maybe more straight seasons of sub-4 ERA, sub-3.5 ERA, or he's just been incredibly consistent. And you get him for 1.5 years. He has control going in next year more than just a rental. He also has a vesting option for 2028, where if he pitches over 180 innings in 27, he gets another year. I very highly doubt he pitches over 180 innings next year. I think he's marked that twice in the past 5 years. I don't think he'll get to that mark. So I imagine this just saying as a 1.5-year deal. He's a veteran right-handed pitcher. He has a little bit of the control. But I think the White Sox, especially going to the playoffs like this, they needed a starter who's at least been there before and done it before. And you can trust Castillo. He's been in that moment before. He's pitching the playoffs. And I think in 2027, if he stays assuming he stays with the White Sox again next year at the back end of that rotation, I think he'll be a lot better next year with the White Sox than it was this year. And I honestly didn't think the haul to give him up was that bad. Sir Anthony, 1.5 years of control, has a 5.37 FIP this year. The dude walks everybody. You knew what you were getting with that and hoping he could control it. He still struggled. Nolan Jones is 28 and hasn't been in the MLB all year. He's been decent in AAA. I didn't see him ever finding a real spot with the White Sox, especially getting Brent Doyle into the deadline. Boston Smith, in my opinion, was the big loss here. He has been tearing the cover off the baseball. Across high A and double A, he's made 2 promotions. He has a 174 WRC plus and has 27 home runs in 85 games. Unbelievable hitter. He slid in at Seattle's 14th ranked prospect. But overall, I feel like Sir Anthony and Nolan, you're not losing that much with either of those guys. And losing a catching prospect, especially when you have a couple other ones that you like, I didn't think it was that bad of a trade, especially getting a guy with control for another year and getting a veteran right-handed pitcher who has some playoff experience.
I'm just going to throw up this chat question for anyone that's tuning in, listening right now. I was curious, chat, has any deadliner move impressed you so far? we'll get your thoughts in as we talk about them. But Jackson, the only thing, and again, I'm honestly, man, when it comes to Castillo, like if the Sox, if the season ended right now, right, and the Sox they got the 2 seed, they're in the bye. Next thing you know, the divisional series starts. Bro, Castillo is one of your top 3 arms starting in one of those starts. So, like, you could probably have gotten a better vet arm out there, and we can talk about that shortly. But as far as what the value would cost, you're essentially just moving 2 flippable contracts with Dominguez and Castillo. You're eating money. As far as the value you're giving up is not much. So, and again, with that production that he showed even a season ago with Seattle in the postseason, like that's a guy that I can lean on, that I can know he's going to get me. He's going to eat up, down the stretch. He's going to eat up innings, and even the postseason, I know he's going to be a competitive arm to try to get me outs. So, as a whole, I like it as a whole. The only thing that I question, and again, I'm not the fly on the wall in Chris Getz's office when he's stressed out at the deadline, not getting any sleep, and on the phone with these GMs. But when it came to the specifics of the money, and I talked about this with Slavko last show, he left $10 million on the table to negotiate. Me personally, I would do whatever I could to try to get a piece back that I can try to take a shot on to develop. Just for the sake of this conversation, Jackson, how I'm seeing it right now, I don't see a lot of depth in our outfield, in our system. I know that in this draft class, we talked about Weingartner, but one of my favorite prospects right now in the Dominican League is Sebastian Romero. We signed him this offseason. I like him. Wolkow. I'm in favor of Wolkow, but I don't think there's enough depth, right? And for me in Seattle, you got Juan. Oh God, I'm gonna butcher this, but Rijo. It's Rijo. Jackson, you can do your homework assignment and look him up, but that's a kid I would take a shot on, just to see what we can make out of it with our developmental side right now. Because that's the thing, is Seattle's really good at developing pitching right now and not hitters at the moment. So we're vice versa, which is crazy, because the White Sox used to be the opposite. We used to be really good at developing pitching and not hitters, and we flipped it. But the other side of this, again, is the pitching. So I love Mason Peters. I know that in this hypothetical, Getz would have to really get creative on giving them a little bit more value to try to get Peters back in that return. But again, you got the $10 million of value to play with on the table. So as far as how I see it, Jackson, I felt like there could have been more creativity there to play with. And we're going to go, this kind of alludes to the next deal, but even if I had to include Gabe Davis in this deal instead of the one to the Mets, that's a guy that I would play with that creativity, right? With that $10 million that's on the table, with that value in Gabe Davis, I would package him in this deal versus the next one. But who knows? Maybe Chris Getz did tried his best to get really creative, and maybe I'm just going out of sort here, but what's your thoughts as a whole? Do you think I'm kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say like crazy here, but do you understand where I'm coming from, or what's your thought on where I was coming from with specifically the money that we had to eat at the end?
No, yeah, I understand that, and I think that was what it was going to take to get the deal done. I think it would have been good to get another outfield prospect back, maybe like another catching prospect or young arm, but I think definitely outfield prospect would have been nice. But I think that would require maybe taking Nolan Jones out and putting in a more valuable piece there. I think with what they gave up, that it was probably a pretty fair trade. Like overall, like I get where you're coming from with the whole money thing, but I think with where the White Sox are at, they're kind of able to afford to eat a little bit of money for the next year and a half. in order to make this trade work and overall not give up a whole lot. Because I don't think they're going to be missing Sir Anthony Dominguez or Nolan Jones a whole lot. Boston Smith, good catching prospect, but like I think overall, like they got pretty decent value there.
Got you. Well, that's a good point, because with where these teams were at with, obviously in general, trade deadline, it's going to be overpay for the most part. So you're probably right. As far as Seattle side of it, you're probably right. They're probably stronghold on you're going to eat up this money, right?
Yeah.
So I think of the hypothetical I had like a month ago, because we had a Seattle hypothetical, and instead of Sir Anthony, I put Benintendi's contract in there. And I said that in that hypothetical trade, I was going to take on all of Castillo's contract and 2/3 of Benintendi's contract just to get some of that negotiation to try to take on some of that value with the minors. So, but yeah, in real life, you're probably right, man. They're probably stronghold, because they're like, at the end of the day, yes, it's known that they probably had to move, if not one arm, but two. Like they could have easily dealt Hancock and Castillo to try to promote Cade Anderson and Ryan Sloan here shortly. So I think you're right. So let's move on to that next deal. And that is us getting back Brazoban and giving up Gabe Davis and Zach Franklin. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, Brazoban, 36 years old, but does have a lot of control. Just depends on if he wants to pitch until he's 40 or not. This year he has been very good. 2.54 ERA, 3.26 FIP. Is just get up a 3% barrel rate. Does not get hit hard. Just a very fun pitcher, like good middle of the rotation to set up guy kind of guy, and he has a bunch of control. I think with the package given up, Zach Franklin, not gonna lie, just kind of whatever of a prospect. Gabe Davis, like you said, he's shown some pretty decent ability in high A. In double A, struggled just a little bit, but has pretty good strikeout number. Same with Zach Franklin. But I think for the value, ended up being okay. Maybe a little bit of an overpay, but we saw at the deadline as a whole, we saw a major overpay for relievers from pretty much every team. I think overall for the value, Gabe Davis still in at 20 in the Met system, Franklin unranked, decent value. Just hoping Brazoban, wants to play for the next 3.5 years, given he is 36 years old. And I mean, if he wants to stick around and keep playing, this is going to be a good middle of the bullpen, middle reliever for you for the next couple of years.
Yeah, this is tough because, again, with that after the lockout, you're looking at 38, 39, 40 years old. So I love the production from Brazoban last year into this year. But regardless, it's going to be time will tell. It's a hypothetical on bringing him in or any other arm in. I'm kind of weary of the age and really what he's shown to this point. We're only talking about 1 year of solid production from him prior. As an arm that's already 36. So we're talking about that first year of solid production being 35. You know what I'm saying? There's 4 or 5 years before then where I'm that's in question. So I understand the controls coming back. Again, I'm weary of it, but his first production was versus Boston, allows it up the base hit up the middle to bring the run in. And then we saw some good, he kind of rebounded in the Cleveland series this past weekend. So I'm hoping we're going to need outs down the stretch, right, with a divisional race. So hopefully Brazoban is how I think of this, Jackson, is he's replacing Sir Anthony, and he's had a better, season this year and season prior where I'm all right, for me, it's an upgrade of Sir Anthony, but that's about it for the time being. Yeah. I'm not sure if you agree to that or not, but that kind of wraps up our conversation with Brazoban. But Next deal, we go and strike with the Rockies, and we bring in Brenton Doyle, a Gold Glover, and the outfielder. I know he had a 20 home run season. I think it was 2 years ago, and we're bringing back, the Rockies are getting Mason Adams and Carlos Vielma. I've never heard of Vielma, I'll be honest with you. Mason Adams, though, again, prior to the injury, kid was dealing. Wish him the best, and hopefully coming off that injury, he gets back to where he was. But for where I saw him, it was just the back of the rotation kind of arm. I'll let you take it away, Jackson.
Yeah, I think overall got good value here. Doyle has 3.5 years of control. This year, all honesty, he's not been a great player. 51 WRC plus. He's hitting 221 with slugging under 300. He has struggled. In 2024, we saw a guy who is a very, very good player. 23 home runs, had 30 stolen bases, 3.6 F4. If he can get back to being healthy, get back to being consistent, he's an elite defensive outfielder who has shown a good ability to steal some bags and has some pop in the bat. And I think for the value you gave up, like Mason Adams just didn't fit where they were at right now. I think the White Sox have a lot of young arms ready to be called up, as we just saw with McDougal and Smith. I don't think Mason Adams really had a spot there. And VM is just a 16-year-old in the Dominican League who's hitting pretty decently. That's basically just a lottery shot for the Rockies. I think for the value of the player that Doyle can be, I think it was a good pickup for the White Sox. Potentially a guy who can, good bench speed, bench defense. If he can get healthy and get consistent, I mean, this is a guy who can make a serious impact.
Yeah, and for the sake of it, we can just say really quickly this deal with Joey Bart didn't go well for us because poor man tore his one of the muscles in his hand, and he's going to be out for the rest of the year. But Duncan Divot goes back to the Braves in that deal for Joey Bart for our audio listeners. But you want to give we're going to save that next for our the guys that could have had, could have been hypotheticals, but we needed a catcher, and we got one for a couple of games, and then now we're still in need. So Jackson, RIP to our catching situation.
Yeah, I thought Joey Bart was a good pickup at the time. Still has another year left on his contract, but just bad luck there for the Sox.
All right, so I want to see. Oh, that's right. I didn't have any from last. I was looking at last show if we had any photos of any potential deals, but we don't. So, Jackson, I'm going to allow you take it away from an outsider looking at. You told me you had 6 to 8 targets for the Sox. You felt like could have been good profile matches. So I want you to enlighten me on my pain of the deadline. So go ahead and take it away.
I feel like the bigger names they could have added, I think, had to have been 1-2 positions. Controllable starting pitching or catching, I feel like were the two things they needed to add. And the names I feel like would have made sense. Logan Webb of the Giants. I didn't know if the Giants were shopping him, but if they were, the White Sox had the prospects to get it done. And another arm.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Do you think me personally, I'm not doing that. If they start off with Caleb Bonner, I'm hanging up the phone right away.
Yeah.
But do you realistically, do you think that gets done without Chalowski or Bonner? Do you think the Sox can pull it off?
I think it could have gotten done without them. If not, then I can very much understand the White Sox deciding to, nixing that. So, I mean, yeah, I get that completely.
So, like, I know we're trying to grind here, but what do you think it would take to get that done?
I could have seen
from the Giants side of it. Like, who do you think they would be like, all right, if it's not Bonner, this is where we're going?
I could have seen a package including Hagen, Anor McDougal, Carlson, maybe Lodis, just some of those guys in the top 10 who have had pretty good production. I mean, I can maybe see like Hagen and Carlson. I'm personally not extremely high on Carlson. I thought that would have been a decent move to get rid of him a deal like this. But I think Bonner and Chalowski would have been the immediate like, okay, no, and hang up the phone right away. But I think in theory, like Smith, Carlson, and maybe 1 or 2 other prospects potentially could have got done. I just am not sure how much the Giants value Webb.
Yeah. I'm obviously pulling the trigger. If it's anyone else in that system, if it's not Chalowski or Bonnemer, everybody else that's in their top 10. So essentially, everyone else in the White Sox 3 through 10, I would trade away if I'm getting a controllable piece of value like a Logan Webb. So go ahead and take it away, Jackson. I don't want to stop you from your trade list. So go ahead.
The other ones I had was Angels left-handed pitcher Reed Detmers, who I believe got traded to the Cubs and then just didn't get traded to the Cubs. I think that was the whole thing that happened. But we saw the Angels move controllable starting pitcher Jose Soriano to the Blue Jays. I feel like that would have been a decent pickup. And then the two catchers I had was my St. Louis Cardinals, Ivan Herrera. Struggles a little bit defensively, but dude hits a lot. And I feel like the Cardinals, it could have made sense to sell pretty high on him with where they're at and get some good value from the White Sox who desperately needed catching.
So I agree with you, and I would have loved Herrera because Cardinals need to make room for Rainiel Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Do you think – let me ask you this real quick since you're a Cardinals fan. Do you think Rainiel stays at catcher, or do you think he shifts over to first base? Where do you think he ends up?
He's pretty good defensively. I think he'll stick there. Herrera is atrocious catcher. Like he gets a lot because we've been carrying 3 catchers on the roster, and he gets a lot of DH days. He's just not great defensively at catcher, so that's why I feel like they had trouble like moving him at the deadline because a lot of teams saw him as a net negative defensively while being the plus bat. But I think Rodriguez will likely, hopefully, stick at catcher and be the long-term option.
Okay. Go ahead, carry on. Okay.
The last big name would have been tough to get this done. Adley would have been so awesome to be in a White Sox uniform, but we saw the absolute utter haul the Red Sox gave up for him. And I feel like the Orioles would have asked for a Bronner or a Chalowski, and I don't think that would have been worth it in that spot. But if you could have gotten it done without those guys, Adley would have been awesome. And then a couple of the smaller names I had, Cincinnati catcher Tyler Stevenson, he would have been just a rental.
I wonder what end up being his price, because the only reason why that doesn't get done is because Cincinnati's asking for something ridiculous.
Which I think it is just asinine that the Reds didn't move him because they're not good, not going to make the playoffs, and he was a rental. I feel like that would have been the perfect fit for the White Sox. Another Cardinal potential option would have been their relief pitcher, Riley O'Brien, a very controllable arm, just made the All-Star team. I wanted the Cardinals to sell high on his value, and I feel like it would have been nice for the White Sox to bring in a controllable relief pitcher. I felt like that would have been a good match. And then the last 2 names I had was rental JT Brubaker from the Giants, who's had a good year. I felt like if the White Sox wanted to go out and add just another reliever arm for cheap, it could have been him. And then I really wanted the White Sox to go get Luke Weaver. He ended up getting traded to the Pirates from the Mets. I think he has a year and a half of control. I feel like that would have been a really good pickup for the White Sox, but they ended up not getting it done. But those were kind of like the smaller tier names that I had written down.
So, that was ridiculous. Riley going for that Adley going for that price. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it would have been with where the White Sox are at right now. It would not have been worth it to go get Adley. I just wanted to write dream upon the stars of Adley being in Chicago.
Bro, that was ridiculous. I still can't believe that deal got done.
Yeah.
Good for Baltimore. Because that's an organization that just was hugging their system for forever. And it's sad that, it's at where it's at. But the crazy thing is that they're still in the mix too.
Yeah.
Like for the wild card. But I understand, like, if they believe in Basayo and they gave Basayo that contract. So obviously he's a piece in their core that they truly believe in. And not saying that, that they didn't with Adley because they gave him that deal too. But clearly they just didn't have a fit for Adley anymore. And they're moving him. And But the question is again, you see the controversy with Gunner's agent after, so I'm surprised. I mean, I know you're in the mix, but if you're not going to keep Gunner, I mean, why don't you deal Gunner as well? You know?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But I'm with you on Riley. I agree with your sentiment on the value of trading him because I mean, it depends. Like as a Cardinals, do you believe in the guy, or are you on the business side where you're like, you know what, we can replace him with another arm. I want to get top value that I can.
For me, with that, with how volatile relievers are,
Mm.
there is a chance he is really good for the next 2 or 3 years. There is a chance he is in AAA next year. I know he's good right now, and I know the Cardinals aren't good right now. And I don't think he's in that upper. I don't think he's ever going to be in the upper echelon of relievers. So I just, in my brain, I was like, I think they can get ultimate value for him right now because I'm not sure if it's ever going to be higher than it is right now. And I thought it would have made sense to trade him. I like the player. He's fun to watch. He's had some big moments in St. Louis this year. But like just my like baseball analytical brain is like, you can get great value for him right now. Go move him. Go bring in, because I feel like they could have gotten a pretty decent haul, especially from the White Sox. Maybe like a Wolko and another pretty decent arm for O'Brien would have been an awesome pickup. And I feel like that would have been a nice move for the White Sox, getting a controllable reliever like that who was an all-star to add to the back of that bullpen. I feel like that would have been a good match on both sides.
I'll give you Davis Martin.
I'll pass. Miles Michaelis 2.0. I'll pass.
Damn it! I was trying to sneak one in on you.
I'll give you back Matthew Liberatore. How's that sound?
Fuck, I might as well do it at this point, man. I mean, we'll swipe arms and see who comes up on top. But no, that's actually a piece that I would actually really consider. I might have to do something else though with Wolkow. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, I probably like if you're telling me as far as relievers go, with what we end up with, I probably would give up Wolkow in that situation just to get a truly dominant, arm in that pen right now. Because again, you brought up Weaver. Like I would prefer O'Brien and Weaver, because Weaver didn't go for that much value either, right? What was?
I believe not. Let me.
Off the top of my head, I couldn't even remember that piece. Oh no, that was the Sammy Stafora, right?
Yes, that was for the Mets got the number 9 prospect from the Pirates. I honestly feel like that could have been like a Walco or like Landon Hodge, someone like that, a 1-for-1.
I actually really like Stafora. I thought that was a really solid get there by the Mets. The Mets did really well with their
Yeah.
I felt like their value to, those amateur scouts, I think, saved them on this deadline for their New York Mets. So my side of this, Jackson, with our rotation, I don't think Davis Martin fits he's already 29 years old. He has control. Me personally, though, I would have flipped both, tried to get what you could for Fedde and also Davis Martin, and I would have filled in with rentals. So not only would I have gotten Castillo, I'd have also probably tried to deal for Robbie Ray as well, just to fill in that rotation with those 2 vets on rentals. But dealing Davis Martin, I want to see if I can get any value back that I could for, with where the market was for arms. Because in that situation, I'm trying to not only compete for this year, but set up the future as well. So I'd be not only a buyer, but a seller too. And I think you could have been both in this situation. But I felt like you should be aggressive. At least one move for value. Me personally, I would have filled in the rentals on the pitching side, and my aggressive move would have been on the hitting side. I felt like Heliot Ramos going to the Yankees, I feel like that was a solid piece that they got in that deal. And it is what it is at the end of the day. And I know you threw out a controllable piece. One I was interested in was Andrew Abbott.
Yeah, that would have been a fun. That would have been a fun one too. I looked at him. I ended up going with Detmers a little bit more because for some reason the Reds just didn't want to trade anyone at this deadline, which was just psychotic out of them. But that would have been a good pickup. So that kind of matches the vibe of Detmers. For sure, that would have been a good pick. I wanted them to get controllable starting pitching, but I understand with where they're at, wanting to maybe keep the prospects for another year, and then kind of see what happens with the lockout. Go buy some starting pitching, like going into that. So I mean, I overall think with where they're at, they didn't give up too. I would have rather them like be a little more passive, like they were, than be overly aggressive and trade the absolute house and go make 2 big trades. Like overall, I think they did a decent job with it all.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just filling in, a couple of spots that they're not really needle threader moves. They're just kind of, and maybe at the end of the day, it was more so about the learning curve of this for this young roster, like getting these guys to truly feel out that full 162 game season and just, be a part of that learning curve. They want to see what they truly had before they can really assess those holes going into this off season. The only thing though, Jackson, for me, again, I feel like you have to get that assessment in the moment though. Like the AL is up in the air right now. Like take your shot,
Yeah, I get that.
I really felt like I don't think any of those rental pieces for the pitching side would have hurt them at all. And if you're telling me that it would only take, let's just say, 2 top 10 pieces to get a controllable asset, you have the depth to replenish that. So, I don't think that would hurt you at all. Take that shot and see where it takes you. Because I think when you look at that hit or that lineup for the White Sox, it's filled with your prominent, besides Murakami, right? Vargas, Colson, those guys haven't played a full 162 game season yet. So I felt like you could put a hitter in that lineup to go with them to kind of balance out any regression that they're seeing. Because Vargas and Colson, they're seeing regression right now. They've been cold for the last 2 weeks. So you're going to get that though, because I love saying there's going to be a regression to the mean when it comes to your career total, and I think we're seeing that right now. And I'm just hoping that it's not going to be as long as a cold streak for Colson and Vargas the rest of the way. I'm just hoping it's like a 2-week thing and they get over it, but you just never know with these hitters, right? Like how long those droughts can go. This is the game of failure for a reason. I am hoping that these guys end up, making their adjustments and having strong finishes, because that's what I want to see with these young hitters.
Absolutely.
But I don't disagree with what you said with your analysis from the outside. Let's wrap it up here, Jackson, going over McDougal and Hagen Smith. So go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, I'll run through these pretty quick. Hagen Smith called up, number 2 prospect in the White Sox system, 51st in the MLB, 5th overall pick. As you can see, grew up an Arkansas fan. Hagen Smith went to the University of Arkansas, so I watched him pitch a lot in college. Unbelievable stuff. In AAA, this year, 35% strikeout rate. Had a little bit of walk issues. We saw that in his first MLB outing. Went 2 innings, 0 hits, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts. Stuff is awesome. Weird arm slot, fun fastball, like a short cutter, depthy slider, showing a changeup as well. Has a good 4-pitch mix. The real issue with him is going to be control. You're hoping you can get him to the point where he is the ultimate goal is like the Blake Snell, Dylan Cease type, the guys who walk a little bit, walk above average, but still strike out the house and can do it effectively. And you're hoping he doesn't get to the point of the Sir Anthony Dominguez that you saw this year, where the strikeout was not enough to negate how many guys he was walking. that's just kind of the thing with him. The stuff is unbelievable. You just got to compound that into the zone a little bit. McDougal, 5th-round pick in 2021. White Sox developed him very nicely. He's their 4th prospect in the system right now. In AAA, he's been used as like a starter and a reliever. 2.86 ERA, striking out 28% of batters. 6'5" righty, hard fastball. Sits in the upper 90s, has touched 100, 101. Adds in like a big hammer curveball and a shorter slider. Gets a ton of whiffs. Another thing with him, command issue. Interested to see how the White Sox use Hagen and McDougal to finish the year out as a reliever, whether it be as a starter. But this is 2 guys with electric stuff, Grant Taylor type stuff that can strike out a ton of guys. All I know, these 2 guys are going to be fun to watch and make the White Sox a lot more watchable. I would rather watch these 2 start games than Davis Martin start games.
Yeah, no, I really been calling for these 2 for the past month. I mean, I understood the injury situations with both of them coming in, rehabbing out of them, but I was really hoping to get both of these guys up as soon as possible. And it's about time that they got their call. To be honest with you, Jackson, I thought McDougal had the shot to be like coming out of spring training. I was calling for him to make the opening day roster because I thought he could have had a breakout year, if not the same way as Shane Smith. Like, I think he could have been that impactful. Granted, that didn't come out to be. I'm hoping, though, that we see that talent down the stretch here because he's a dog on the mound, and I'm excited for it, man. Hagen, I've been calling for him to start out of the pen because I want to see him break it in, facing these MLB hitters in the pen first. Hopefully we can see him as a starter coming out of the lockout. You brought up the mutual option on Castillo. I think he's getting 0 in 27.
28, you mean?
Oh, that's right. It was a 28 option, not 27. Yeah. My bad.
Yeah, it's a vesting. So if he pitches 180 innings, then he gets it. If I'm the White Sox and he's sitting at like 165 where he gets a phantom IL, judging where he's been the past 2 years, I would be incredibly shocked if you got 180 innings at Luis Castillo next year.
Yeah. Anyways, back to Hagen. Hagen, again, after the lockout, it'd be nice. I mean, again, this is your first round, 5th pick selection, so I need this guy in the starting rotation. But down the stretch, when we're in a divisional race, both of them coming to the bullpen, depending on the splits, Jackson, like, I am excited for these guys coming out of the bullpen, righty, lefty. They're dominant arms. We saw the debut of your boy Hagen. He killed it. 2 innings. How many strikeouts was it again? 3 was it?
3 strikeouts, yeah.
Yeah, he was awesome. Me personally, I talked to you in the studio about this. I was really disappointed in the Sox sending or optioning Noah Schultz. I don't know what's going on with how things are, if it's something with Venable or what, but I felt like it was a really short leash, especially when Noah didn't walk in his last 4 starts. 3 of the last 4 starts, he didn't allow a walk. And I know the walk prior to this month was rough and they were damaging him. The walks were hurting him. But as of lately, he was progressing. And again, he limited in Tropica. He limited the Rays to 1 run through 5. Was the reason why they won that game. And then you end up with this mound visit situation with the Guardians, which then you option them after that. I was just like, what are we doing?
Yeah, it's confusing. Interested to see how they're going to handle all those guys the rest of the year.
Because my thing is I feel like you need to develop him. Like I talked about the learning curve with this young roster on the hitting side. It matters just as much so on the pitching side. Like if you want to win, have sustainability with this core, this is the time to developing him, is right now. Before it matters most down, when the expectation is contending for a World Series, this year they're ahead of the game, right? Expectations weren't as high as they will be next year, but this is a time to develop your arms, and the fact that you option him down, I don't even know how he's going to go down in AAA, like how he's going to do down there, but I want to see him facing and making his adjustments at the major league level. Because again, if he's developing down the stretch and he's changing these late, like how he was before the All-Star break when he had that great performance versus Oakland, if he's doing that consistently down the stretch, that's a guy, Jackson, that you could be having Noah starting in a playoff game if he's showing that production. And that's what you want to see. He's probably, I would say Noah Schultz is your highest ceiling in that pitching staff. And the fact that you're not allowing him to make those, challenge himself and make those adjustments, I think it's going to hurt them. I think it's a mistake. Me personally, I would want to see, because I alluded to it a week ago now, that I would want to see McDougal and him piggyback off each other, eat innings that way and help save this bullpen.
Absolutely.
And I think that would be an awesome way to go about it. And I just don't. Maybe they end up doing this, Jackson, in 2 weeks from now. Maybe they end up doing that, but I just don't understand why it was such a harsh, or I don't say harsh, a rash decision to do it right away. But Jackson, that does us for the show. We talked everything from the Ozzie recap. We deep dived into the Sox 26 draft class, talks about the trade deadline and our recent rookie promotions with McDougal and Hagen Smith. So before we bounce, Jackson, allow our listeners where we can find you, and if you got any work coming out with Baseball Unstitched.
Yeah, you can find me at my personal Twitter, jsco23. Do a lot of analysis stuff on there. Follow Baseball Unstitched podcast. I appear on there weekly to do like a weekly pitching topic on there, and then do some full length episodes from time to time. And I help run the Twitter on there. So follow Baseball Unstitched. Follow my personal Twitter, jsco23. Well,
you might not be a light skin, but you might be our next co-host for some future shows if Justin has to go make more cupcakes with the family. But my man is hard at work. That's why Jay's not here. He's a hardworking man. So we're gonna have Jay back soon. Jackson, thank you for joining us and being with us with me on this show. But just in general, man, we appreciate having you on for the multiple appearances you've had in this season alone. Looking forward, maybe we can have you on before we wrap up the season and go a little bit more into any of the minor league stuff, because there's at least a solid month and a half of the minor leagues to go. So there should be some interesting things coming out of the systems as we wrap up this season. So, but yes, as far as Baseball Unstitched goes, please everybody go and check out their stuff. They got a lot of great stuff as always. And next week's show, we are planning on having Elijah Evans on from Just Baseball Media. Usually we have on Elijah to do an annual system update, and that's what we're going to do. Next week's show, we're going to do a deep dive into the White Sox minor league system, as well as give an update on the big leagues, because there's a huge series this weekend in Detroit. Detroit is, I think, in second place now. They've been hot as of lately. So down the stretch, it's looking like it's going to be between Detroit, Cleveland, and the White Sox. So we're going to deep dive into that. I will also be going to the game on Friday in Detroit. So I'm looking forward to seeing our White Sox on the road. But everybody, thank you for tuning in for tonight's show, and catch us next week as we have on Elijah Evans. Thank you for tuning in and watching the Blackout.